Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Comeback Conversations. Today's episode is a deeper one. We'll be talking about something that sounds sort of quite small on the surface, but actually says a lot about your confidence, your self-image, and the way you see yourself. And this is, why do compliments feel so uncomfortable when you don't believe them yourself? Because well, I see and I think so many women hear things like, you look really well, you're doing amazing, you look like you've lost weight, you seem happier, you should be proud of yourself, you're doing so well. And instead of letting that sort of, well, instead of accepting it, instead of thinking, do you know what, maybe I am doing well, I might be doing well, the first instinct is just to reject it or say things like, I've still got loads to do. Oh, it's just the lighting. Oh, it's just this outfit. It's quite flattering. Oh, I've been terrible this week. Oh, I don't really feel like I look any different. It doesn't go in. And I think that this is something worth talking about because when you can't accept a compliment, it's usually not about the compliment. There's something deeper. It's a belief that you currently hold about yourself. Because if someone says you're doing really well and everything inside you goes, no, I'm not, that tells us something. It tells us that your brain is still holding on to an older version of you, that version that didn't feel confident, that didn't feel good enough, that the version that always felt behind, the version that compared herself to everyone else, the version that thought, I'll be proud of myself when I finally get there. And, well, this is the problem. If you only allow yourself to feel proud at the finish line, you'll spend your whole life feeling like you're not enough. Because the finish line, of course, always moves. You lose a bit of weight, then you think it should have been more. You get fitter, and then you notice someone fitter. You feel better in your clothes, then you pick apart one part of your body. You start showing up for yourself then and focus on the day that you didn't. And before you know it, even if you made huge progress, you still don't feel allowed to accept that you're doing well. So today I want to talk about why that happens, why compliments can feel awkward, and how you can start learning to actually accept the fact that maybe you're doing better than you're giving yourself credit for. And this is issues I've come across with current clients of mine as well. And if they're listening, you know who you are and you know I'm talking about you. So let's start with the obvious. Compliments for anybody can feel uncomfortable because they put attention on you. And if you're someone who's spent years putting everyone else first, attention on you can feel strange. For a lot of mums, especially, your life has been about everyone else for years: the kids, the family, the house, the work, the school runs, the meals, the emotional load, the remembering everything, the making sure that everyone else is okay. And then suddenly somebody says something nice about you, not about what you did for somebody else, not about how helpful you are, not about how organized you are, not about being a good mum, but about you. You look great. You seem happier. You're doing amazing. And it can feel exposing because you're not used to the focus. You're used to deflecting, you're used to just brushing things off, you're used to minimizing yourself. You're used to making sure that you don't come across as big-headed. So the compliment comes in and your instincts completely push it away. Not because you're rude, not because you're ungrateful, but because receiving it feels vulnerable. And that's the big thing. Receiving a compliment properly means allowing someone to see you. And for some people, being seen is more uncomfortable than being ignored. Because when you're seen, you can't hide behind any of the usual stories. You can't hide behind the sort of, I'm just getting by. You can't hide behind the I'm not doing enough, I'm not there yet, it doesn't count. You actually have to pause and think, and maybe they're right. And that can feel really emotional because what if you're what if you are doing well? What if those little things that you've been doing are actually adding up? What if the walks, the workouts, the better food choices, the water, the earlier nights, the saying no sometimes, the trying again after a bad week, what if all of that is working? What if you're not as stuck as you thought? That sounds positive, but for a lot of people it feels uncomfortable because it challenges the identity they've been carrying for years. And if you've spent years believing I'm the one who always gives up, then someone saying you're so consistent at the moment, that maybe doesn't fit. And if you've spent years believing I'm not confident, then someone saying you seem so much more confident, again, doesn't fit. And if you've spent years believing I don't look good, then someone saying you look really well doesn't fit. And when something doesn't fit the way you see yourself, fit you the way you see yourself, your brain sort of rejects it. That's why compliments feel uncomfortable. Not because they're wrong, but because you haven't caught up with the version of you that maybe other people are starting to see. And again, like I've mentioned before, this is something I see a lot with clients. Their habits improve before their confidence does. Their body starts to change before their self-image does. Their fitness improves before they actually feel like a fit person. Their routine improves before they believe they are someone who can stay consistent. And that gap and that almost white space can feel really confusing because from the outside, people can see the progress. They can see you looking brighter. They can see you standing more differently, more proud. They can see you carrying yourself with a bit more energy. They can see you showing up more. They can see your clothes fitting differently. They can see you making that effort again. But inside your head, you still might be looking at yourself through the same lens, the old lens. You might still be seeing the version of you that felt uncomfortable last summer, the version of you that avoided those photos, the version of you that got changed 3 times before going out, the version of you that said, I hate how I look, the version of you that promised herself every Monday she'd start again. And that's why someone else could compliment you and you genuinely don't believe it because they're looking at current evidence. You're looking at an old story. An old story that can be powerful because it might have been built over years and years. Years of putting yourself last, years of failed diets, years of stopping and starting training, years of comparing yourself, years of criticizing yourself in the mirror, years of feeling like you've lost that old version of you. So when someone gives you a compliment, they're not just saying something nice. They're accidentally challenging years of self-talk. And yeah, that can feel really uncomfortable because you may have become familiar with being hard on yourself. And this is important. Just because a thought feels familiar, it doesn't mean it's true. I'm not doing enough might feel familiar. I still look awful might feel familiar. I always mess it up might feel familiar. I can't accept that I'm doing well yet might feel familiar. But familiar doesn't mean factual. Sometimes it just means you've repeated it for a long time. And one of the biggest parts of rebuilding confidence is learning to question the thoughts you've accepted as true. Because sometimes the person complimenting you is not lying. Sometimes they're just seeing something that you're just not ready to see yet. Now, let's talk about deflecting because this is probably the most common response. Someone says, you look amazing, and straight away you go, oh, no, I've got such a long way to go. Someone says you're doing so well, and straight away you think or say, I've been awful this week. Someone says you seem more confident, and straight away you say, I don't feel like it. And look, I get it. It can feel safer to deflect, but because accepting the compliment feels like pressure. It feels like you say, thank you, I'm doing well, then you're making some big statement. It feels like you're saying you're finished, or you're perfect, or you're suddenly full of yourself, or you've got it all figured out. But accepting a compliment doesn't mean any of that. You can accept a compliment and still be a work in progress. You can say thank you, and I still have goals. You can acknowledge the progress and still want to improve. You can be proud of yourself and still be building. That's the bit people miss. Pride doesn't have to wait until the end. Confidence doesn't have to wait until the goal waits. Self-respect doesn't have to wait until you're the fittest person in the room. You're allowed to appreciate where you are while still working towards where you want to be. That's not arrogance, that's healthy. That's a great mindset to have. But when you've spent years of being critical of yourself, being kind to yourself can feel wrong. It can almost feel like you're letting yourself off the hook, as if the only way to improve is to hate yourself into action. But I promise you that does not work long term. You can shame yourself into a few good days. You can criticize yourself into a strict week. You can panic yourself into another diet. But you cannot build a happy, healthy, sustainable lifestyle from a place of attacking yourself. At some point, you need to learn to encourage yourself. And accepting compliments is 100% part of that. Because every time you reject a compliment, you're reinforcing the idea that good things about you don't count. And every time you accept one, even if it feels awkward, you're practicing a different belief. You're practicing the belief that maybe you're allowed to be proud. There's another reason for compliments. Compliments can feel uncomfortable. Sometimes when someone notices your progress, it creates fear because now it feels real. Now people have noticed. Now, yes, there's pressure to keep going. And I think this is a big one. Someone says, you look like you've lost weight. And instead of feeling happy, you then suddenly panic because your brain goes, shit, what if I put it back on? What if I mess this up? What if they notice I go backwards? What if I can't keep up? What if it's just another phase? So rather than accept the compliment, you downplay it. You protect yourself from any disappointment. You say, oh, not really, because then if things don't continue perfectly, it feels less embarrassing. And that's very human. That is human nature. But it also shows how much pressure you might be putting on yourself. And I'm a big advocate of this as well. I'm one of the people that do this massively. And progress doesn't have to be perfect to be real. You're allowed to have a good month and then a messy week. You're allowed to feel confident one day and not the next. You're allowed to lose weight and then maintain it for a bit. You're allowed to have momentum and then need to slow down. You're allowed to be proud of progress without promising you'll never struggle again. Because guess what? That is just life. And this is where, again, a lot of people go wrong. They think confidence means never doubting yourself again. It doesn't. Confidence is not waking up every day thinking you're amazing. Confidence is being able to have a wobble without completely abandoning yourself. Confidence is being able to say, I don't feel my best today, but I still look after myself. I had a bad week, but I'm not going back to square one. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I can see I'm moving. I feel uncomfortable accepting this compliment, but maybe I'll just say thank you anyway. That's confidence, not perfection, not constant positivity, not pretending you love every part of yourself all the time, just learning not to completely reject the good. Now, the next part is probably the slightly deeper bit. Sometimes compliments feel uncomfortable because deep down, you don't believe you deserve them yet. And that can sound harsh, but it's very common. You might think, I haven't worked hard enough to deserve that. I haven't lost enough weight to deserve that. I'm not consistent enough to deserve that. I still have bad days, so I don't deserve praise. I'm not the person they think I am. And this is where the goalposts keep moving. You tell yourself, I'll feel proud when I lose the weight. Then you lose some weight and say, I'll feel proud when I lose more. Then you get fitter and say, I'll feel proud when I can do more. And then you start feeling better and say, I'll feel proud when I look better. And eventually, nothing is ever enough because the problem was never the lack of progress. The problem was the rule you created around when you're allowed to feel good about yourself. And that rule needs changing because if your brain is always waiting for perfect, you'll reject every bit of progress along the way. And I'm telling you, that is absolutely exhausting. It's exhausting to never let yourself have a win. It's exhausting to make yourself the exception. Someone else loses £5 and you say that's amazing. You lose £5 and you say should have been more. Someone else gets back into the gym and you say you should be proud. You get back into the gym and you say I'm still unfit. Someone else goes for a walk instead of doing nothing and you say, oh, that's brilliant. You say the same, you do the same thing and you say it barely counts. See how unfair that is. You'd never speak to someone else the way you'd speak to yourself. And that's a sign. Because maybe the issue isn't that you're not doing well enough. Maybe the issue is that you've forgotten how to recognize effort when it comes from you. So, how do you actually start changing this? Because I don't want this episode to be about me saying, you know what, like accepting compliments, accept compliments, because I know it's not that simple. If you spent years rejecting nice things people say, you're not suddenly going to wake up tomorrow and fully believe every compliment, but you can practice. And the first thing is, when someone compliments you, don't argue with them. That's the starting point. You don't have to give a speech. You don't have to suddenly believe it 100%. You don't have to say, yes, I'm amazing. Just stop arguing. I'm just going to say that again. Just stop arguing. Someone says you look really well, you say, thank you. That means a lot. That's it. Someone says you're doing so well, you say, thank you. I'm trying. Someone says you seem more confident, you say, thank you. I'm starting to feel a bit better. That is enough. Because the goal at the start is not to fully believe it. The goal is to stop rejecting it. That's a massive difference. You're creating that little gap. Instead of a compliment comes in and sort of a compliment comes in, rejection goes out. You pause, you let it sit for a second, even if it feels uncomfortable, and then the second thing is to start collecting evidence because your brain needs evidence. Confidence isn't built by just repeating affirmations you don't believe. Confidence is built by showing yourself evidence that you are becoming someone you can trust. So write down the things that prove you're doing better, not just scale weight, not just measurements, real evidence. I trained twice this week, even though I was busy. I walked instead of doing nothing. I had a bad day and didn't let it turn into a bad week. I drank more water. I ate a proper lunch. I didn't snack all evening like I normally would. I went to the gym even though I felt nervous. I wore something I normally wouldn't. I didn't cancel on myself. I didn't ask for help. I asked for help. I started again. That evidence matters because when someone compliments you and your brain says, "No, I'm not doing well," you can actually challenge it. You can say, "Well, hang on. I'm actually doing better than I was. Not perfect, but better. And better counts." That's a phrase I'd love you to remember. And if you take anything from this episode, better counts. Not just perfect, better. A better choice counts. A better week counts. A better mindset counts. A better routine counts. A better relationship with yourself counts. And the more you recognize those things, the easier it becomes to accept compliments because they don't feel so foreign anymore. They start matching the evidence. Now, this is a big one. A lot of people think confidence will arrive after the body changes. And I know I've discussed this before. And yes, of course, physical progress can help. Feeling fitter helps, feeling stronger helps, clothes fitting better helps, losing weight can help, having more energy helps. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that stuff doesn't matter because, of course, it does. But confidence can only be attached to how you look, cannot only be attached to how you look. Because if it is, it becomes very fragile. One bad photo ruins it. One bloated day ruins it. One heavier weigh-in ruins it. One comment ruins it. One comparison ruins it. Real confidence has to be built far deeper than that. It has to come from knowing you're showing up for yourself. It has to come from keeping promises to yourself. It has to come from doing hard things. It has to come from respecting yourself enough to keep going even when it's not perfect. Because when you build confidence in that way, it becomes much harder to lose. And this is why I always talk about structure, habits, and accountability. Because for so many women, the biggest confidence shifts comes from that doesn't come from one big transformation photo. It comes from the quiet realization. I'm actually doing it. I said I'd start and I did. I said I'd get back to exercising and I have. I said I'd stop putting myself last and I'm trying. I said I wanted to feel more like me again and I'm making moves towards that. Now, that is powerful. And sometimes other people notice that before you do. They notice the energy, they notice the shift, they notice the change in your face, they notice the way you talk about yourself, they notice the way you carry yourself, they notice that spark coming back, and they compliment you. But if you're still waiting to become some finished version of yourself before you can accept anything positive, you'll miss the beauty of the process and what's already happening. You'll miss the comeback while you're in it. And that would be such a shame because you deserve to experience the progress and not just chase the next target. So I want you to start seeing the words thank you differently because for some of you, saying thank you to a compliment is not just manners, it's a confidence exercise. It's a rep, like a rep in the gym. Every time someone says something nice, you say thank you instead of tearing yourself down. That's a rep. Every time you resist the urge to say, "Oh no, I look awful," really, that's a rep. Every time you let yourself accept that someone might genuinely mean it, that's a rep. Every time you allow yourself to feel proud for 2 seconds, that's a rep. And confidence is then being built in reps. It's not built in one big moment. It's not built because one day you magically wake up and love everything about yourself. It's built by small, repeated moments where you treat yourself differently. And at first, it will feel awkward. And that's okay. New things do feel awkward. Going to the gym for the first time feels awkward. Starting a new routine feels awkward. Eating differently feels awkward. Setting boundaries feels awkward. Putting yourself first feels awkward. Accepting compliments feels awkward. Awkward doesn't mean wrong. It usually means unfamiliar. And this is where you have to ask yourself, do I want to keep practicing rejection? Or do I want to start practicing acceptance? Because you're practicing one of them either way. Every time you say, no, I'm not doing well, you practice rejection. Every time you say, thank you, I appreciate that, you practice acceptance. And over time, that matters. So here's something I want you to think about. When you look in the mirror, what do you do first? Most people look for what they dislike. They don't look for progress. They don't look for strength. They don't look for the fact that they look less tired. They don't look for the fact that their posture has changed. They don't look for the fact that their face looks brighter. They go straight to the part they've always criticized. Stomach, arms, legs, skin, face, whatever it is, it's different for everybody. And because they go looking for the flaw, they find it straight away. Then when someone compliments them later, they don't believe it because all they have in their head is the flaw they focused on that morning. So this is a little change. When you look in the mirror before criticizing anything, find one thing that is better. Just one, not perfect, better. Maybe you look more awake. Maybe your clothes are fitting slightly better. Maybe your skin looks better. Maybe your shoulders look stronger. Maybe your waist feels different. Maybe you're standing taller. Maybe you're just looking, you just look like you're trying again. Find just one thing because your brain needs training to notice progress. If you ever only look at problems, compliments will always feel confusing because they don't match what you trained yourself to see. So start training yourself differently. One thing every day. What is better? What am I proud of? What would I notice if this was someone else? That last question is powerful because if you had a friend, if your friend had made progress, would you dismiss it? Probably not. If your friend had started walking more, training more, eating better, drinking more water, showing up after years of putting herself last, would you tell her it doesn't count? No. You'd say I'm proud of you. So why is it different when it's you? That's the question. Why is it different when it's you? And maybe it's time it stopped being different. This might be the most important part of the episode now. You're allowed to be proud before you're finished. You don't have to wait until you've lost the weight. You don't have to wait until you're confident in every single outfit you own. You don't have to wait until you're training 5 times a week. You don't have to wait until you never overeat. You don't have to wait until you never have a bad body image day. You don't have to wait until every part of your life is sorted. You can be proud now. Proud you started, proud you're trying, proud you're learning, proud you're not giving up like you used to. Proud that you're having honest conversations with yourself. Proud that you're making yourself the priority again. Proud that you are becoming more aware. Proud that you're doing something for you because that matters. And actually allowing yourself to feel proud along the way makes you more likely to continue because people don't stick with things they constantly feel like failures at. If every week you tell yourself not good enough, eventually you'll stop wanting to try altogether. But if you can say, I'm not perfect, but I'm proud that I'm still here, that creates momentum. That creates self-trust. That creates a much healthier relationship with the process. And that is what long-term change is built on. Not hating yourself until you arrive, but learning to respect yourself enough to keep going. So if you're listening to this and compliments make you uncomfortable, I want to say this to you directly. Maybe the compliment isn't the problem. Maybe the problem is that you've been too hard on yourself for too long. Maybe you've got so used to dismissing yourself that kindness feels suspicious. Maybe you've spent years believing you're so behind, so being told that you're doing well feels strange. Maybe you've been waiting for some perfect version of you before you let yourself feel proud, but what if it didn't have to wait? What if the woman people are complimenting, what if the woman people are complimenting is already there? Not finished, not perfect, but there. Trying, changing, growing, showing up, coming back to herself. What if that allowed you to believe 5% of the compliment? Just 5%. Someone said you look really well. Instead of saying, no, I don't, you think, maybe I do look a little bit brighter. Someone says you're doing well. Instead of saying I'm not, you think, maybe I am doing better than I was. Someone says you seem more confident. Instead of saying, I don't feel it, you think, maybe they can see something starting before I can actually feel it fully. And that's enough. You don't have to leap from self-doubt to full confidence overnight. That doesn't happen. You just have to stop slamming the door on the possibility that you're actually doing well. Leave it a little open. Let the compliment in a little. Let the evidence in a little. Let pride in a little, because this is where it all starts. So, before we wrap this episode up, I want to give you a few simple takeaways. First, stop arguing with compliments. Even if you don't fully believe them yet, just say thank you. That's it. Second, start collecting evidence that you are doing better. Write down the small wins, the walks, the workouts, the better choices, the moments you didn't give up, the times you showed up when you didn't feel like it. Third, remember that better counts. It doesn't have to be perfect to matter. Fourth, look for progress before flaws. When you look in the mirror, ask yourself, what is better before you ask, what do I hate? And finally, allow yourself to be proud before you're finished. Because if you wait till everything is perfect, you will never let yourself feel it. And you deserve to feel proud now. Not because you've completed the journey, but because you're on it. And for a lot of women, even starting the journey again after years of putting everyone else first is huge. So don't go and dismiss that. Don't make it smaller than it is. Don't wait for someone else to give you permission to feel good about yourself. And then when they do compliment you, try not to throw it away. Maybe just say, thank you, I'm trying. Because you are. Because that alone is a sign of growth. So that's today's episode of the Comeback Conversations. And if this one hit home, I really want you to take this into the rest of your week. The next time somebody compliments you, don't reject it. Don't explain it away. Don't point out what's still wrong. Just pause, breathe, and say, thank you. That's your first rep. And if you're someone who knows you're ready to rebuild your confidence, feel better in yourself, and stop feeling like you've lost who you are a little bit, then this is exactly what we work on inside of my coaching. Yes, we work on training. Yes, we work on nutrition. Yes, we work on weight loss, fitness, habits, and structure. But deeper than that, we work on helping you feel like you again. Because the goal isn't just to look different, it's to walk into a room and not feel like hiding. It's to get dressed and not start your day by criticizing yourself. It's to accept a compliment without having to feel that urge to fight it. It's to feel proud of yourself again. So if that sounds like something you need, reach out to me, message me, or just come join the free group. And as always, thank you for listening. I hope this episode has helped. And have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll speak to you in the next one.